All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a really compelling argument from our source material. It's about the calls to boycott Christianity in India because it's supposedly a foreign religion. And as we'll see, following that line of thinking leads to a pretty startling place.
So right off the bat, the source hits us with this question. It really frames the whole discussion. It's a test of logic, right? It's asking us, if you start down this road, where does it actually stop?
But before we get into the whole logical puzzle, the source grounds us in what's happening on the ground. It's super important to understand that this isn't just some academic debate. It's playing out against a backdrop of rising violence. Yeah, the source material draws a pretty direct line here. It points to reports from human rights groups that say as this kind of rhetoric gets louder, the physical attacks on the Christian community are going up right along with it.
And just look at that number, 745. According to the United Christian Forum, which is cited in our source, that's the number of documented attacks in just the first 11 months of 2024. Think about that. It's more than 2 incidents every single day.
And you can see here, that huge number for 2024, it's not some random spike. It's part of a really clear upward trend. The number of reported incidents has been climbing steadily, from just over 400 in 2022 to nearly 750 before 2024 is even finished. The pattern is, well, it's hard to ignore. So what do we mean by attacks? Well, the source breaks it down, and it's a whole range of things. You've got the obvious stuff like physical violence and demolishing churches, but it also includes things like false arrests based on accusations of forced conversion and social boycotts, which are designed to completely isolate communities.
Okay, so what is driving all of this? Now we're going to dig into the core idea, the ideology that the source says is really fueling this hostility.
The source zeroes in on this ideology known as Hindutva. At its core, it's a political movement that wants to redefine India's identity as an explicitly Hindu nation. And the source names several groups that promote this idea, like the RSS, VHP, and the Bajrang Dal.
So this is the heart of it. This is the central claim we're going to pull apart. The argument is basically this. Christianity, which, by the way, makes up just 2.3% of India's population, isn't from India originally. And because of that, it's a foreign influence that needs to be removed. That's the premise. And this is where things get really interesting. The source essentially says, okay, let's take that argument seriously for a second. Let's test its logic and see what happens when you follow it all the way down.
The source really puts this foreign argument under a microscope. I mean, if the real reason is to get rid of anything with Christian or Western origins, well, where do you stop? Do you boycott the calendar we all use every day? What about the English language? Or India's legal system, which has so much British influence? You see the problem? The logic quickly forces you into a corner where you'd have to dismantle huge parts of modern Indian life.
Okay, so after testing the logic of the argument, the source then turns around and attacks the main premise head-on. Is Christianity actually foreign to India in the first place?
And this slide just lays it out so clearly. You've got 2 completely different stories here. On one side, you have the claim it's a foreign import, and on the other, you have the source's historical counterargument that Christianity has actually been in India for nearly 2,000 years, all the way back to the Apostle Thomas in the 1st century. And here's the part that really flips the script. The source makes this pretty incredible claim. With a 2,000-year history, Christianity isn't just native to India, it's actually been part of the landscape longer than many of the traditions we think of today as being central to modern Hinduism. That totally challenges the whole foreign label.
So you might be wondering, if the arguments against this foreign idea are so strong, why is the persecution actually gaining ground? How is it even possible? Well, the source says it comes down to some very specific legal and social tools. A key weapon, according to the source, are these anti-conversion laws that are on the books in 12 states. It claims the laws are written so vaguely that they're really easy to misuse against minorities. The source even alleges that police sometimes work with radical groups to file false charges, and in some places, those charges can carry a sentence of life in prison. And a quote like this, it just cuts through all the policy talk, doesn't it? It shows you the real human cost. When this farmer says they want to remove us from society, it shows the goal isn't just harassment. It's about trying to erase a community's very existence. And what's happening isn't the same everywhere. The source shows how this persecution looks different depending on where you are. In Uttar Pradesh, it's a huge number of arrests based on false charges. In Manipur, it's been the outright demolition of hundreds of churches. And in a place like Chhattisgarh, it's social boycotts.
being denied the right to use the village well, or even the right to be buried. So, after looking at the violence, the shaky logic, the history, and the legal tools being used, where does that leave us? This source brings all these threads together for one final, very powerful conclusion. At the end of the day, the source doesn't pull any punches. It calls the whole foreign religion argument hypocritical, pointing out how its supporters have no problem using other foreign things like technology. But even more importantly, it says this whole movement is a direct attack on the very idea of a secular India, where religious freedom is supposed to be guaranteed. And this is the question we're left with. It's not really an answer, is it? It's something to think about. It takes this specific issue and asks a much, much bigger question about what makes a nation strong. What is the true cost of targeting your own people? Something to consider. Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.